This video will provide an overview of library resources and services for distance nursing students. My name is Professor Harmon. I'm an instruction reference librarian and the library liaison for nursing at USCA. Today we're going to discuss how to get research help even as a distance student, introduce you to nursing resources available through the Greg Grantville Library, and then talk a little bit about how to search and find nursing resources. Even though you're a distance student, you still have access to library help when you need it. Through Ask a Librarian, there's a couple of ways to access us. One of the most popular for distance students is our chat service. We have chat service provided 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. from Saturday and Sunday. You can also email us directly with questions. You can call us, and you can also make an appointment. If we're to make an appointment in a distance environment, we can either chat with you or we can even talk to you over the phone. In a few moments, I'll show you how to access these resources. As you begin your research, it's important to acknowledge that research is a process. We start with a topic or an idea. We start finding some background information. We refine our topic. Then we select our research tools available through the Greg Grantville Library, and then we search for books, journal articles, or quality websites. We then read and analyze our information. We write up our papers or reports, and then finally we cite our sources. One of the most important questions before you begin your research is to look closely at your assignment and answer a few questions. What is your assignment? What are you doing? Are you doing a paper or are you doing an annotated bibliography? Then also look at what kinds of information you need to be successful. Did your professor specifically specify that you can only use peer-reviewed journal articles? Do you need to find only studies? Or can you choose websites or any type of information? It's also important to know how many pieces of information you need to find. And for nursing, it's very important to pay attention to how current your information is. Even if your professor doesn't have a strict guideline within the last 3 to 5 years, it's important for nursing to make sure that we're looking at the most current information, unless of course you have a class where you're pulling from historical nursing information or from theorists. One thing I like to remind the students of is that there is a large information universe, and there is what we call the visible web, and then the invisible web. The visible web is when you go out and you look through Google or Yahoo and you find blogs, social media, free information. There is some good and free information like things published by the Center for Disease Control, the National Institute of Mental Health, or the World Health Organization. But a large majority of the web is locked behind paywalls. And what you'll notice sometimes is even if you do find an article mentioned online, it's going to ask you to pay for it. Now that's what the library really does, is we provide you access to this information, and while you're at USCA, you should not pay for the full text of any article. If you run into anything that's asking you to pay, make sure you reach out to us. Now that we know a little bit about information and we know a little bit more about our assignment, one of the things to keep in mind when doing research is that words and your word choice can be very powerful. Remember, when we're looking through literature, especially nursing literature, we're looking at things written by professionals, by experts in this field. And so a lot of times the language they will be using will be that expert language. So for example, instead of looking for articles for high blood pressure, we might find things under the word hypertension. Same thing if I was looking for stuff on medical marijuana. The word pot might bring me up very casual conversations or even something about gardening or cooking. It's probably not going to bring me back the super medical literature. If I wanted something written by a medical doctor or a nurse on the topic, I might find resources connecting and utilizing the word cannabis instead. Also, when doing your searching, maybe I was looking for things related to MRSA and gloves and I was not coming back with a lot of information. What I might need to do is broaden my search out and maybe look for things that deal with MRSA and contact clothing, or even look at MRSA and contact precautions. Remember, look closely at the words you're choosing, and if for some reason you're not finding the resources, play around with the different words and think of what terms the professionals might use when looking for this information or writing about this information. When beginning my research, a lot of times I'll pull out a piece of paper and write down some of the terms or concepts that I might use in my search. I kind of like to think of things in terms of research recipes. The databases are very literal, and so when you're doing a search, a lot of times you'll want to keep your concept simple. For example, if I was going to a database, I might look for MRSA, MRSA, and contact precautions. I'm not going to use a lot of other terminology or extra words because, again, the databases are very literal, and the articles that's going to bring back are going to have these two words in it. I could also put the full word for MRSA in my search and contact precautions. And again, if I was finding too much with contact precautions, I might be able to even limit myself down and look for MRSA and protective clothing. Remember to play around with your terms, and if you're struggling to find things, make sure you're reaching out for help. Now on to the library resources. Through the Greg Graniteville Library, you have access to books and databases. The field of nursing is one that is primarily published in journal articles, so while you might find a book here and there, the strength of the research is really going to be in the databases. To access the databases, there is a research guide, a nursing research guide that I will show you in a minute that really is going to be your best portal for all things nursing. Once you're on the nursing research guide, you can find databases like CINAHL and Ovid. You really should be going to places like CINAHL, which is the Cumulative Index for Nursing and Allied Health Literature. It really is the best starting point for nursing research. If you're going to Academic Search Premier for all of your research, you're not going to have a lot of success in finding what you need to be successful. Other databases that can help are PubMed, ScienceDirect, and on occasion you can branch out into other disciplines like psychology and find things like PsycInfo. Again, if you're not finding anything in CINAHL or Ovid and you have a question, make sure you're reaching out to a librarian because we can recommend the best databases for your assignment. As a distance student, you're going to need to log in from off-campus. When you click on an individual database, this page will show up and you'll need to click on the thing that says Login with Network Username and Password. Once you click on that box, the page with the USC Shibboleth authentication will show up. Now the interesting part of the login is this is like your Blackboard login, but slightly different. So for your username, you want to use the first part of your email address. So I'm deborah.t@usca.edu. I would put Deborah T in. But instead of my email password, I'm going to put my Blackboard password in. If you are having problems with these logins and that does not work, make sure you reach out to us and we can help guide you through. I'm now going to switch gears and show you how to access the library database as well as how to search through them. From USC Aiken's homepage, usca.edu, you can access the library by either hovering over Academics and choosing the first item under Academic Resources, or alternately, if you scroll down the page, towards the bottom center you will see the Greg Graniteville Library button down here. Once you're on the library homepage, you'll have access to most of the resources you need through the Research Toolbox. While we're here, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. Remember earlier how I mentioned that you can access and ask a librarian through chat, email, and those other venues? If you click on this button that says Ask a Librarian, this will pull up our Ask a Librarian page. So you can schedule an appointment, you can call us, there are numbers, you can email us by clicking on this link, and also if you click in over here you'll be able to chat with a librarian, again 24 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to midnight Saturday and Sunday. The chat is best for research questions. If for some reason you have a login question, I would highly recommend that you actually email us. Also, while we're here, I'll point out that there is an off-campus access page with a more in-depth instruction and some troubleshooting for off-campus access. Remember how I said that most of the research you're going to be using will be in the databases? The best place to start access is over here through the Research Guides, which is the third tab over. The Research Guides are subject-oriented environment with the best recommended resources for different disciplines. We have a nursing research guide, and once you hit go, this is going to be our central portal for all things nursing. Here we can get started, find books, find websites, and then some citation support resources. If you're looking for journal articles, go to the Find Articles on this page. You can also bookmark your page. Now here you're going to be able to access a couple of databases like CINAHL, Ovid, Lippincott Advisor, PubMed, etc. When you click on these, this is where you're going to be asked to log in if you're off campus. Since I'm on campus, it's just going to let me straight through. I'm going to start by searching CINAHL. If you're familiar with Academic Search Premier, it'll look a lot like this, but again, this is looking through the nursing database CINAHL. The first thing I'm going to do is go back and look at some of my terms that I use. So I'm going to type MRSA, and let's try contact precautions. And before I do a search, I can generally look down the page, and there are a lot of limiters in CINAHL. I can do things like limit to peer review. I can limit to by a date and year. I can also limit it to full text of an article or research article. For this, I'm simply going to limit to peer reviewed and go up here and hit search. On the next page, my results will come back. And what you will notice is even if you forget on the first page, you can still limit things over here to full text or scholarly peer reviewed if you forget on the first one. You can also change the date range. So maybe I want to look at things from 2010 to 2020. That will update, and I'll go from 145 down to 110 resources. Once you start to come back with results, go ahead and look through the results and see if there are any articles that kind of fit your research agenda. Also pay attention to words that it uses. Sometimes it'll give you some ideas for other terminologies that you can use in your search. But once I find an article I'm interested in, I will open up that individual article, and the first thing I'm going to do is read through the abstract. And the abstract is going to tell me a little bit more about the individual article. Now, either on the first page or on the left over here, you can see while I don't have a PDF direct full text, sometimes you'll see this thing called Full Text Finder. What Full Text Finder is going to do is if we don't have the full text in this individual database, this is going to try to open up a bridge to try to connect me to this resource in another one of our databases. So this shows me a couple of options for accessing the full text of this article. This is ideal as in it says get full text, and it says view this article at Science Director of the publisher site. That means that we have this article full text in another one of our databases, and if I click on it, then I'll be taken over to that database where the full text is available, and I'll be able to download the full text PDF of that article. Also, sometimes the second option is sometimes the PDF is immediately available full text within this article. So I can either click on PDF full text here, or I can open up the individual article and pull up the full text PDF over here. When that pulls that up, that's going to pull the entire article, and then I have a couple of options. I can either download it to my computer, or I can email it to myself. One thing to note is in the email option, it does give you an option to send you a citation. I will caution you about trusting the citations in this database. They tend to make errors and you can't trust them 100%, so do make sure that you are looking at the proper citation guidelines and citing according to that. Now the third option for access, so there's PDF. Sometimes we click on Full Text Finder and we immediately access the full text, and sometimes we click on Full Text Finder and it tells us that the full text is not immediately available. We don't generally have the print journals in our library catalog, and so your best option is to request through Interlibrary Loan. If this is the case, click Request Item through Interlibrary Loan. Then it's going to go through and it's going to ask you to select your campus. We are Aiken. And then it's going to ask you to log in with your network username and password. This is the exact same information you would log in from off campus, so the first part of your email before the @usca.edu and your Blackboard password. Once you log in, if it's your first time using Interlibrary Loan, sometimes a form will show up at the bottom right hand corner of the page with the user information form. Go ahead and fill out every single blank. That's the only time you'll ever have to do that. Once you do that, effectively the approach will be click on an article, click on Full Text Finder. It's going to take you in here, and one of the really neat things about Interlibrary Loan is it fills out all the information for you, and all you have to do is go down to the bottom and hit submit. When your article comes in, you'll receive an email at your @usca.edu email address. It will take you to electronically received articles, and do make sure that once you obtain that you go ahead and open up the PDF and save it to your desktop, because things only stay in here for 30 days. If for some reason your request is rejected, make sure you ask a librarian who will help you obtain the full text or explain why it was rejected. So that is library research in a nutshell. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to a librarian. You can even email me directly. Happy searching!